freak, so it drives me crazy to start anything late or be late, and you all are on time, and you shouldn't be penalized. So we'll go ahead and start. Thank you for coming tonight. I know we had to reschedule this because of Ian, which I'm thrilled we didn't get hit. We certainly feel for all of those south of us who are trying to rebuild, and they're going to have a long, long haul. So we were very blessed. You don't wish it on anybody else, though. Yeah. So I'm Frank Hibbard, the mayor. Joel Castelli is here, who is our public communications director, who helps me with all things technology, because otherwise I'll be stuck. I'm going to go through a bunch of slides and just tell you a little bit about the entire project, and then we'll just open it up to questions. So this is a rendering of the two 27-story foot towers on the City Hall site. This is a picture of the hotel that is going to be on the Harborview site. So I'm going to give you a quick overview. The City Hall site is going to have two 27-story towers, 600 total units between the two. There will be restaurants on the ground level of that project. And then on the Harborview site, there's going to be a 158-room boutique hotel that's 13 stories tall. And then there's, to the south of that, is going to be a banquet facility that can seat up to 1,000 people. All of the buildings you will see are oriented so they are perpendicular to Osceola Avenue and also to the waterfront and Coachman Park. That's important because it's going to give view corridors from Osceola at ground level to be able to know that Coachman Park and the waterfront is there. If you ever go to South Beach, one of the complaints that we get is the fact that there's a canyon effect. And if you're driving south on Gulfview down to the Sand Key Bridge, oftentimes you would not know, unless you're from here, that there is water behind all of those buildings. That will not be an issue here. So this is the hotel. And this is a look from the southwest. You see the hotel, and then on the right is the banquet facility. Hey, Joel, could you turn the lights down now that everybody's in? Might be a little bit clearer. This projector is not the strongest. So this is the Coachman side of the hotel. On top of the banquet facility is going to be a beer garden on the roof. There will also be a rooftop deck on the top of the hotel, along with restaurants and some retail. Wrong direction. They're on the left. Push the hole on the left. Please. That better? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So a little bit clearer. So there's going to be a lot of accessibility for both of the projects for all of the public. And I kind of look at Imagine Clearwater as, you know, phase one. This really is phase two to continue to activate downtown. This is looking from the hotel southwest, and you can kind of see the entryway into Coachman Park and the walkways that are going to be available to everybody from Osceola Avenue. Up in the top left corner, you can see Water's Edge. Water's Edge is the existing condominium that is 26 stories tall. This is a look at the two apartments towers from Osceola Avenue at the corner of Osceola and Pierce. And one of the things that the developers did, first of all, is continue the view corridors east to west, but also they created this little park-like area here because there's some specimen oaks that they wanted to retain. And then between Water's Edge and the North Tower, you're going to see where some of the restaurants and retail will be in the apartment buildings. A lot of people ask, why apartment buildings? Why not condominiums? So when we had appraisals done, we had two appraisals. They were both properties were appraised at highest and best use. Well, highest and best use gets you the greatest price, but ordinarily would be condominiums. If someone were to buy both of the properties for what would make them the greatest profit, condominiums would be the ticket. The problem with condominiums, and you see this on the beach and at Water's Edge, which is adjacent to this, a lot of times those buildings are vacant during the hot months. So people go up to North Carolina and Michigan and Maine to escape the heat. Whereas with the apartments, those are generally occupied year-round. And what we're looking for is to activate the downtown. And so apartments are critically important. This is a picture of the North Tower and the access point between Water's Edge and that North Tower, and you can see some of the retail that would be adjacent to that North Tower. So why are we going to referendum? The reason is twofold. First of all, in our charter, which is our Constitution, it is required that these parcels on the bluff go to the citizens to be approved to sell. The other reason is we are not selling these at auction to the highest bidder. We originally had an RFP, a request for proposal, back in mid-2021. And we got several proposals back. One of them was from a group that we thought was the best, and we negotiated with them, but the final product really was not what we desired. It had a large parking garage on the Harborview site that blocked views. They were mainly trying to draw people from the beach. It didn't have as much residential on the project, so we are not selling it to a highest bidder. We are selling it to two developers who have partnered, D'Annunzio Group, which is led by Dustin D'Annunzio, who is a local kid, grew up here, went to Clearwater Central Catholic, wrestled there, and then ultimately went to Harvard and wrestled in Harvard. Has done a lot of projects up in the Boston area, is doing projects down in St. Petersburg, and now hopefully in his hometown. The second partner in the entire project is the Gotham Group, which is a fifth-generation company out of New York City. They have a tremendous portfolio of rental buildings up in Manhattan. I was up in New York back this April for my real business that pays the bills. And I went up early because I wanted to see Gotham's products. And I went to Gotham West, and if you've ever gone down to where the aircraft carrier is on the river, you are about 2 blocks away from Gotham West. And it's a 1,000-unit development, absolutely beautiful. They do rooftop amenities for all of their tenants. They have common areas. The units themselves are very well built, very efficient. So I was impressed with them. That's the reason that we are going to referendum. It was voted unanimously by the City Council to go forward with this. I talked about the restrictions. This is the actual referendum question that you will see on the ballot. So by state statute, we are required to keep ballot questions to a maximum of 75 words. Hyphenated words count as 1. We were about to hyphenate words that have never been hyphenated before. We didn't do that. We got it in right at 75 words. And this is going to be the last item on your ballot on November 8th. So if you've already gotten your mail ballot, it's a 2-pager. It's the very last question because it goes federal, state, county, and then ultimately city. And for the city, this is the only thing we have on the ballot on this election because our elections for elected officials occur in March. So that's the ballot language. I'm not going to read it to you. You can check it out on your ballot or you can check it out on our website. So imagine Clearwater. We should be done by mid-June. We're planning to have a really large week of festivities leading up to 4th of July, something for 7-8 days. We'll have different concerts. There's a lot of different components for Imagine Clearwater, this overall view. And so on the south end, you've got surface parking. I don't know where the pointer is on this thing. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Sorry, everybody. Technologically challenged. No, there is one. Anyway, oh boy. There's a large water feature. We have a new marina building. There's going to be a new playground with interactive fountains. This is the playground. It kind of looks like a water park. This is just a composite material rather than having mulch. So it is not a water park, although we will have the largest interactive fountain in all of Pinellas County. And then in the middle of the park is the green. We have a grand staircase with fountains that cascade down from Osceola Avenue, where Cleveland used to be. And then on the north end is the amphitheater that will hold 4,000 undercover and up to 15,000 total. It's now pointed directly at the library so that it isn't pointed at the residential the way it originally was. So these are the two developers we're partnering with, Gotham, as I said, and the D'Annunzio Group. These are the two properties. So the old City Hall property that was built in 1966. Prior to that, it was a shuffleball board court. And then this is the old Harborview site. And then that upper box is the existing parking lot for the library. That is how patrons will access the parking garage for the hotel. They're going to have 169 spaces. Of those, 50 will be reserved for the city for overflow parking for the library. This again is an overview of Coachman Park, and you can kind of see that orientation of the buildings, that they're all running perpendicular to the waterfront. They pulled the northern building all the way to Osceola Avenue to not affect the views of Water's Edge. One of the things that is also in the proposal, we were originally going to have what's called a Bluff Walk that was going to go all the way from Pierce to Drew Street that ran along the bluff. That was eliminated via value engineering to reduce the price. So the Bluff Walk just runs on the northern portion of the property to the grand staircase. The developers have proposed an elevated bridge system that would connect the apartments to the hotel property and to the northern Bluff Walk. And they're willing to participate up to $2 million. We do not yet have a full design or cost on that, but it will be an agreement that will be come to terms between the city and Gotham should we move forward. So what's on the Harborview site? The Harborview site's a 1.3 acre site. I hit that. The two buildings that I talked about, the northern building is 158 rooms, 13 stories. And then the southern building is 12,000 square feet, where you're going to have the banquet facility and some other commercial restaurant uses, along with the 169 spaces. Now, all of the spaces on both sites are going to be underground. Now, if you all know downtown Clearwater, which you do, it all sits on a bluff. And so one of the ways that the city is participating in the project is by infusing, it's a big number, $22 million to underground the parking. Now, when we build a parking garage today above ground, those parking spaces run $25,000 to $30,000 a space for structured parking garages today. Didn't used to be that astronomical, but that's what it is today. These are going to be more expensive because they're going to be undergrounded. And one of the issues there is you have to have great ventilation because, again, they are underground and you don't have the air flowing like in an above ground parking garage. This shows the Bluff Walk that's proposed. That's kind of that orange curved line. It shows all of Imagine Clearwater along with the 2 apartment towers and the hotel. You can see that there's good view corridors between the buildings. So on the City Hall site, it's 2.6 acres. We have given the developer latitude to build as few as 500 units, but as many as 600 units. There will be 600 parking spaces associated with that. Many people ask about the height. Downtown Clearwater does not have a height restriction. You can build to the moon. We have restrictions through what's called floor area ratios, which downtown is a 4.0, which is extremely dense. They are not going to reach those levels, but that is what's allowed. This shows the orientation of both of the towers in relation to water's edge. And so back to the financials. The developer is going to be paying $9.3 for the Harborview site and $15.4 for City Hall. Again, those were appraised as though they were going to be condos. So we are getting highest and best use. We are going to dedicate up to $1.5 million for impact fees through the CRA. The CRA is our community redevelopment area. And what that is partnership between the city and the county to redevelop certain areas that are struggling. Our CRA runs from Highland Avenue to the waterfront and from Chestnut to Drew. So this is money that is generated in the CRA and has to stay in the CRA. And then the $22 million is coming out of our parking fund. We did recently sell the parking garage on North Beach that is on Poinsettia, just a little bit east of Mandalay, where Pelican Walk is. We received $12.5 million for that. We do have a very robust parking fund, and that is generally generated by tourists out on the beach. We also are going into a partnership with Peace Memorial Presbyterian Church. And if you don't know where Peace Memorial is, it is the pink church on the corner of Pierce and Fort Harrison, on the western, northwest corner of Pierce and Fort Harrison. And so they have sold us their back parcel of land. They used to have a building on it. It's been demolished. We are going to do a partnership where we are going to build a 550 space garage on that site that will also serve Coachman Park. They will have 125 spaces on Sundays and 17 spaces during the week for their staff. But it's going to be a nice addition to this area. And then, as I said, we could split the building of the pedestrian bridge. Developer has offered $2 million for that. The entire project is anticipated to cost $400 million. A very significant investment. Some people ask, why are we giving any incentives at all? Well, downtown Clearwater is far from being a proven market. I think we all know that. It would be easier probably to go to St. Petersburg or to Tampa, that is a proven market, and develop something. But Dustin D'Annunzio wanted to do something in Clearwater, and we have been looking for the right partners. We believe that they are. Important facts within the project. First of all, the state allows for a development agreement of up to 30 years. We're actually changing our ordinance because our development agreements in the city of Clearwater only last a maximum of 20 years, but we're going to increase it by ordinance up to 30. So the state allows us to have 30, and if both parties agree, that development agreement can be extended. So what does that mean? it basically limits who the project could ever be sold to for 30 years. It has to remain market rate apartments. And if it was sold, it has to go to companies of similar caliber to those that we have. There are some prohibitions of self-storage. I don't know why we would ever have self-storage on the bluff overlooking the water, but our attorney thought that was important. And no light assembly, no nightclubs outside of the hotel itself. And it also limits amplified music, which I always find amusing, seeing as it's sitting adjacent to our 4,000-seat amphitheater that is going to have significantly amplified music, but they will not be in competition with us. We are going to continue to give them ingress and egress, which means you can exit and enter the parking garage for the hotel. And then we are helping with the parking through that contribution from our parking fund. The buildings are required to be LEED certified, which is an environmental standard to make the buildings energy efficient to the silver standard, and they will also be required to have 5% EV installed chargers in the 600 units with up to 10% EV ready. We are going to be demolishing the City Hall in the next several months. It's scheduled for March. There are some environmental issues within that building with asbestos. And so we're going to be knocking down the building and remediating the asbestos. And then, as I said, on the design of the pedestrian bridge, we will share that. There is no obligation from either party to ultimately build it, and then we will help expedite the permits, because we want the project not to languish, but to get done as soon as possible. They have to break ground by December of 24 and be complete by December of 2027. That's it. About 22 minutes. So what questions can I answer? Yes, ma'am.
Two, basically.
Sure.
Is anything here dedicated to affordable housing, and is the parking that the city will have access to going to be free or needed?
So the parking will, at this time, it's assumed to be free, the 50 spaces that are for the library. All of that has not yet been worked out, but we anticipate those will be free. 50, 50.
What's the current?
Hold on, let me finish with her questions. And then your first one, I've lost. Affordable housing. We did discuss adding affordable housing to this project, but these apartment towers are being built to a very high standard, very expensive. And it would have meant that we would have had to have given even a larger incentive to the developer. We talked about up to 10% of affordable housing, but we think we can have a greater impact on affordable housing at a different site. And you generally don't see affordable housing on waterfront property.
I'm thinking of people who are going to be store clerks and waiters downstairs won't be able to afford to live there.
Well, we have two affordable housing projects that we're working on right now. One is on MLK and Washington Street, which is just one block south of Cleveland on MLK. And then another one is on Cleveland Street, just to the east of Missouri Avenue. It was two hotel sites. One was the Econo Inn and one was the Royal Palm, depending on how long you've lived here. We tore those down in about 2006. We bought them and tore them down because they were some of our highest police calls, but we had a lot of issues, from drugs to prostitution. So we bought those. Those are finally going to go into the affordable housing pool. But we think we're going to have over 250 new units if both of those projects move forward. Yes, sir.
About the library parking, what is the current capacity? You said 50 spaces in the garage.
Right. We have about 25 in that parking lot that's just been reconfigured. And then we're also going to have additional parking right there in Coachman Park.
Okay.
We're looking for additional places for parking in downtown, but we don't have anything on that northern end of Osceola yet. But we're looking at different opportunities.
Okay.
Other questions?
Frank, could you outline a bit about the downtown business community and the support that they have for the project?
So we have 3 to 4 groups, depending on how you look at downtown. We have the Downtown Clearwater Merchants Association, we have the Downtown Clearwater Partnership, we have Amplify, and then we have the DDB, which is a taxing agency and an organization that gives money. All 4 groups are obviously endorsing this and supporting it. The Tampa Bay Times came out last week and endorsed the project as an opportunity to move downtown Clearwater forward. We obviously have languished compared to St. Pete and St. Pete and Tampa. I'll tell you, this is what originally got me into politics. If you go back to 2000, we had a referendum. There was a developer named George DeGuardiola. He was from West Palm Beach. He was going to redo the entire Bluff area. He was going to buy Calvary Baptist, which ultimately moved anyway, City Hall and the Harborview site, build a movie theater, 7 restaurants, a convention center with a hotel, and he was going to redo Coachman Park with a new bandstand and put a marina in. It failed. It was going to be $1 a year for 99 years. What I've told people is if you could put your opposition on a bumper sticker, 99 years for $1, you're probably going to lose. And lose it did, 66-34. And so in 2001, I ran for council and lost to Bill Johnson. And then in 2002, I ran again and won, and then became mayor in 2005, and then was term limited out in 2012. To me, this is unfinished business. It's one of the reasons I came back in 2020, is because I want to see downtown Clearwater turn around. I want it to be someplace that our families can go to and create memories and create an economic driver. It is really the only area in our city right now that is not self-supportive, in my opinion, and it should be. And I think it can with this referendum. So, yes?
I think it's a great project and all that. What happens if it doesn't pass? What's going to happen to those properties?
Well, we'll have to go back to the drawing board, and unfortunately, City Hall will be demolished. That's going to happen regardless. It needs to be demolished. The previous city council moved out because the amount of money that needed to go into City Hall to bring it up to standard was exorbitant. So there's already been a new City Hall site determined, which I don't frankly agree with. I voted against it. I was all by myself on that one, and that's okay. But we'll probably languish for another decade because the development community most likely is not going to be interested in coming back for another referendum until time passes and the citizens decide that they want to do something different.
Do you think Scientology would have anything to do with it if it doesn't go through?
Well, regardless of what happens, it will always come back to you. So the chances of us selling those properties to Scientology are right about that, right? I mean, I know that won't pass. So it would never be brought by the city council. I think the properties would just probably be sodded over and we'd leave them as is for the time being, but they really won't drive, economic development. If Rick Baker and I were in office together back when he was mayor of St. Pete. And he will tell you that downtown St. Pete, and those of you who've lived here a long time, used to be pretty scary and pretty boring. And what turned it around was when they started bringing residents. When they had people living down there demanding services on a daily basis, that's when downtown St. Pete turned around. And now it's like, now a lot of the residents want it to slow down because it's gotten so crazy. But they've got positive momentum, and you know, the law of inertia is bodies in motion stay in motion. It's really hard to get a body in motion. That's what we're trying to do with this. I've got 4. I'll give second bites of the apple in just a second.
All right, so the project looks very, very good, very enticing. It's decades in the making. It's really inexcusable. The city of Clearwater down there is like it is right now. Everything you said about St. Pete was exactly right. You could not give property away. Clearwater's starting to get that way in the hottest development time of all time. It's not even close. The number of prices that are being paid for properties, a couple acres for, you know, 15 million bucks. It's crazy. But look what you're getting, and look what they're getting on the Bluff. So you spent $80 million or so on the park, right? 84 million. And so really it's the thing to do. It's I see the $1.5 million of impact fee that's coming from the CRA to the project.
Correct.
The parking that's going to be created, is that mainly for the buildings that are being built, or is it being shared with the park in any way?
No, that is really for the buildings.
Really for the building, because it's one per, and that's
and
even.
Keeping the parking below grade.
Have they looked at robotic parking at all?
I don't know. I
That
doubt it.
That would be one of the things that you should suggest.
And you create a lot more spaces.
Yes, and for same on one. Did they ever look into if we're selling them for what, 24 million, and then we're giving a $22 million incentive back? Did they ever just look at going, why don't we just lease it to you and for $1 million a year and call it a day?
We did look at leasing really the Harborview property more than the apartments. The apartments would be very difficult to get financed with a lease. And we really did not want to have 2 referendums. And it would have required 2 referendums. You could not have combined a sale of one and a lease of another.
Okay.
And that's the reasoning behind it. Also, we anticipate that the taxes first year, now this is going to the school board and to the county and to the city and the CRA, it's going to be just under $7 million in the first year. Right now, those properties are off the tax rolls. They're not generating anything. So think about what that means as far as hiring teachers and building roads and adding more money into downtown. My father's an engineer, and those of you who have heard my presentation, my father-in-law always loved saying it's hard to get the first pickle out of the jar. I guess that's engineer talk, but it is hard to get the first pickle out of the jar.
Yes.
And this is the first pickle. You know, we believe that after we get this done, then things will start to be in a virtuous cycle. So, ma'am?
I was curious about the apartments that are already built on Cleveland Street, heading east, you know, those 2 developments. Did they bring anybody downtown?
Both of them are fully occupied, and they do bring people to downtown, the Apex, and then I can't think of the other right now.
No.
The Nolan, thank you. Nolan is building some amenities on the ground floor that are supposed to be open this quarter. So. Well, this is going to be a little bit, the folks that live in this will have a little more disposable income. So from that perspective, it's positive. Yeah.
You mentioned banquet hall.
Yes.
Is that going to be their property, or does the city get some benefit from that?
No, that's in that southern building adjacent to the hotel, so they'll be running that. Mr. D'Annunzio built the Fairfield Inn out on Clearwater Beach, and they have other hotels in their portfolio, so they do have experience with that. This will most likely be a Hilton product. Probably the Curio Collection is what they're looking at, which is one of their more boutique properties, which I think will be very popular with what's going on in Coachman.
You mentioned the $7 million as the tax revenue. Is that at full occupancy of these?
No,
buildings?
occupancy doesn't matter when it comes to the ad valorem taxes.
But it is, when they're, I guess, full development is really what I should.
That's full development. So that's when both properties are fully complete and CO'd. But the thing with the apartments and the hotel, there's not going to be any homesteading. Whereas with a condo, you might have 50% of the units that are homesteaded. With this, they're all going to be
And
full market value.
the other side of that is that the cost of services as an increase to the city. I'm sure there's been some analysis of that.
We have done concurrency studies. So concurrency is we have to study and make sure that we have enough water, we have enough sewer, we have enough electricity. Duke's, that's their responsibility. Duke has upgraded a lot of the electric down in downtown with Coachman Park, because Coachman Park is our launching pad for a lot of the electric, sewer, water, and everything else as far as utilities that go out to the beach. But we have plenty of capacity. Our sewer plants are running at about 62%. We have a lot of capacity.
Thank you.
Sure. In the back.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One, the traffic impact on Fort Henderson and related streets. They seem rather congested right now.
They are at peak. I live in Harbor Oaks, which is over by Morton Plant Hospital, and my office is in the Bank of America building, which is no longer the Bank of America building, but which is also where City Hall is. So I have a 10-block commute, which is marvelous, but I'm real familiar with, obviously, Fort Harrison and everything. There are times when it is slow, but we have plenty of road capacity still in the downtown to move traffic. The number of units that's being added is not really enough to move the needle, because people are going and coming at different times. And also many people are working from home, and I don't know that that's really going to change even after the pandemic. More and more people are, but we don't believe that the traffic is going to be impactful.
My other question, this is just, with the underground parking, how many levels of underground parking does that go down?
It's going to be 3. And with the bluff height, that can all be accommodated. Because the parking levels aren't obviously as high as the residential units with the ceiling space and whatnot.
So both new buildings will have underground parking?
The hotel, not the banquet space, but the hotel and then the property with the apartments. If you go down to Water's Edge, what you'll see there is they have townhomes that wrap the parking garage. And it's 4 levels. That's one of the, and it makes for a very big box. Whereas these will be down below, which makes a much less daunting building at the grade level. Mr. Lillesand, who's back here, lives in Water's Edge. And
We also have parking levels into the ground at Water's Edge. So we have 6 parking levels, but 2 are down into the same bluff where the apartment underground parking will be. So and engineering-wise, it can be done successfully. I park on the lowest level in Water's Edge, and it's absolutely no problem at all.
I didn't know you had underground.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for being here.
And I'm sorry, would you just briefly recap? One of the buildings is hotel and apartments, and the other is only apartments?
No, so these are the two apartment buildings. These two. They'll have 300 units each. And then you have the hotel here, which is 158 keys, along with the lower banquet facility that you can't see.
Oh, okay.
So you can see the banquet facility here, and then the hotel here, and then these are the two apartment units. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess it's good to ask my question now. These seem to be independent of each other. I don't know why when we're talking about that overhead walkway, and it's gonna be long, and it's gonna be a real site issue, and I don't know why that's even being discussed now.
I found the pointer. You mean this walkway?
Well, you talked about an overhead park walkway. Is that what you're talking about? Or
It's an elevated pedestrian bridge.
Oh, okay, it's not a,
No.
I misunderstood.
No, it's to connect the apartments.
I was envisioning what's on Fort Harrison between the two Scientology.
No.
Okay.
It's gonna be open air.
You're not talking about that.
No. Think,
No, I'm sorry.
it hasn't been designed
That
yet,
doesn't make sense what I just asked.
No, it's okay.
That's too long.
but that's what it is. So they'll continue basically the Bluff Walk
No,
and connect the two properties.
when I read that in the paper, I thought, they're talking about an overhead walkway. Why are we wanting that? So, no.
So that's all it is.
And while I've got the discussion now with the parking, with the Peace property, is that, I know it's separate and apart from.
Right here.
Yeah.
It's right to the east of the two towers.
And I
That'll
guess
be-
the concern I'm hearing people, okay, where are we gonna be able to park downtown? Is that what that's all about, is to get?
That's additional parking. I will tell you, today, Jazz Holiday, by the way, starts this Thursday. It'll be the last year that it's going to be at Baycare Ballpark. But Jazz Holiday, I think this is the 44th year. 45th?
4:30. Okay, either way.
Anyway, it's been around a long
A lot
time.
of years.
They have up to 15,000 people. Back with the old park, I remember Kenny G, we had to turn people away that night. There were a bunch of people who weren't that happy. But we had 15,000 in the park. And normally for the headliners, they'll have 12 to 14,000. And we accommodate that today in downtown. Now the parking's all over the place. Because, there's a county garage down here, right on Court and Pierce. Court and Osceola. There's the Garden Street garage is kind of right here, and then the MSB garage is here. There's a surface lot over by the courthouse. There are surface lots on what we call the super block. People find places to park. The other thing that's going to occur is more and more people are using rideshare because they're drinking and they don't want to drive, thankfully. And so they're using rideshare to come to concerts and also to leave. And we do have rideshare areas for Coachman Park so people can be dropped off and picked up. You had another question, I thought. Well, I can come back. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am, and then I'll come to you, Bill.
How does the library staff feel about the hotel next door?
I haven't heard any concerns about it. I mean, they are going to have to share that parking lot as far as vehicular traffic, but it shouldn't have a negative impact on the library. Bill?
The conference facility, will that be managed by the hotel?
It will.
Okay, so it's kind of a hotel with a conference facility.
That is separate rather than being in the main structure.
So is there a skywalk between them?
There is
or-
not.
Okay.
There's gonna be kitchen facilities in the banquet facility that are independent of the hotel, from what I've been told. What else? Yes, sir.
Well, I have observed there's a bit of a homeless population around the library.
And in it.
What is the resolution for that? It's not compatible with the rest of the plan.
We have a homeless issue. I can tell you from the years of my experience, the more activity we have, the less the homeless like to hang around.
Okay.
So this will probably help it, but they move. I mean, we closed down a feeding area next to the police department and what we call the municipal services building. And it's kind of moved over to First United Methodist 3 days a week. And so they move to where the feedings are, but they tend to like to be left alone. So when you add a bunch of activity, they're gonna migrate somewhere else. That's not the reason we're doing any of this, but that is kind of the offshoot of what occurs.
Thank you.
The library, designed by Robert Stern, one of the nationally recognized architects in the late 20th century, is a landmark. I love the building. I think the roof design, paralleling the waves of the sea, and it speaks to Clearwater. I like the design of the two tall towers, the way it opens up, gets the views. You really haven't seen much with the hotel site, which is proximate to the Stern building. I know there was a name on some of the concept and perspective drawings that you had, Bihar.
Yeah, they're out of St. Petersburg.
Okay.
I don't know where that is.
Maybe
there you go.
I've
I
worked
can't
on,
pronounce the second name, so when
I've
you
worked
figure it
on,
out.
sites with Robert Stern in the past, but I'm not familiar with Bihar veterans and how they might be recognized and address some of those compatibility issues.
So they've done several of the projects down in St. Pete. They were one of the finalists for the entire Trop redevelopment site down there. And then Mayor Welsh has kind of reset that, so I don't know who's going to come out on top. And now the Rays have said they want to put a proposal in as well. So Mr. Behar lives on Clearwater Beach, very well respected. I think he does beautiful work. The final designs have not been completed. These are the concepts. They aren't going to go to full plans until the referendum passes because it is extraordinarily expensive. Which is why they won't break ground until December of '24.
And the design review, how is the city handling the design review aspect?
They will still have to go to the CDB and go through the normal process that any developer would. But I can assure you, they have been told that these concept designs are what we expect to see. I met with David Pickett specifically to say, I do not want to be associated with, pictures like this, and then you come up with something else. Because at that point, we could still deny it. They do not take possession until all the approvals have been made. What else? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What evacuation zone is this site?
I don't know that.
What was the question?
What is the evacuation zone?
Because I know that there can be limitations on high-density housing and evacuation zones, or your
David?
I live there, and that bluff is zero evacuation. It's 31 feet above sea level. The buildings are built to a Category 5 storm, so actually people will have, in past hurricanes, come to our building to stay in it because it's safer than almost any other place in North County.
In the new map, though? You said you used to.
Oh, the new map on the west
Also
side.
have it
Yeah.
as a no evacuation zone.
And then my other question is just from a realistic standpoint. How many of these, I know you can't really guess, but you said that this is a one-to-one, one apartment, one car. Realistically, how many people are probably going to be more like a couple or a partner situation and there's going to be 2 cars?
We will probably get some overflow at that new garage across the street. But a lot of the cities are going to one-to-one because they want to move people away from having multiple cars and moving more towards pedestrian downtowns.
And I think that's great. I hate using my car now that I work from home. But realistically, I think that there's going to be a lot more cars than maybe what we're thinking, and that still may cause problems with parking capacity down there. I know that's why I never go downtown. I've been there twice in 2 years.
Drive to downtown St. Pete and see what it's like.
Oh, I don't go to St. Pete either.
Well, then I guess you don't have really have a question about it. But if you did, you'd go to St. Pete and you'd see they have exactly the same design and criteria and parking and everything, and they don't have a parking problem. I've never been to downtown St. Pete and not been able to get a parking spot, ever.
We really do have a lot of parking. If you want to come down at night, parking is not our problem. I mean, it really isn't. I'm across from the Garden Street garage. You can fire a cannon off at 5 o'clock and you're not gonna hit a car. I'm usually the last one out of there and it's empty. And there's 350 spaces and that is on the 500 block of Cleveland, basically. We have a lot of parking on a lot of other areas too. There's a surface lot just to the north of that that's completely empty at night. I mean, we just don't have a parking problem. Our code requires one-to-one.
Well, I guess I'm envisioning if this is successful and you want people like me and my husband to come downtown, which we just don't do because it's been terrible experiences when we do go down there. And you add these extra houses or apartment complexes with cars. I'm envisioning if this is successful the way you want it to be.
We will build more parking, but first we have to have a problem. I mean, we're gonna ultimately take over the PSTA depot because they're moving on to Court and Myrtle. And we're taking over the lot across from Peace Memorial. That's another great site potentially for more parking. But I'll tell you what, I'll meet you for dinner sometime and we can walk around and I'll show you the parking that's available. I'll give you my card. Yes, Dave.
For the planning of Imagine Clearwater, the parking issue kept coming up over and over again. And this parking study that was done, part of that identified 3,400 parking places within a 5-minute walk of the park. The approach has to be the other way around. When you have a problem, we'll deal with it, but we would anticipate, and we've shown that 15,000 people come to concerts at the old venue and don't have any problem finding a parking place. And that's because there's plenty of parking.
There is, you just need to know where it is. We've done a lot of wayfinding so you know where parking is with signage and whatnot. But as Tevye says in Fiddler on the Roof, may I be smitten, with, well, I want to be smitten with a parking problem in downtown Clearwater. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I guess it's more of a comment. I was a definite no when this, when I originally heard about what they were going to try and do again. And then after I read everything and seen the presentation and really reviewed, now I was trying to find things that were wrong with it. And it really, this is the time to do it. If we don't ever do it now, it'll never be done. this is a Class A plan that will make a difference for all of Clearwater.
Well, this is it. I mean, this is our opportunity. So I hope everybody takes advantage. The problem is, and I'm thrilled to be here and that all of you showed up, but it's hard to get the word out when you're talking to 30 and 20, and, you know, we're trying. But if you could get the word out with your neighbors that you've been to a presentation and you believe in it, because your word is more important than mine. You know, word of mouth is really, really important. So, and we're only weeks away, and many people have their ballot in their hands today, and they'll be voting. And I hope they get all the way down to the bottom of the ballot. Ma'am, you had a question?
I did. I was wondering on the Imagine Clearwater portion with the waterfront and all that stuff that we were talking about before. I'm wondering if that's coming in as the budget anticipated, and if these buildings, with the way that prices are changing, interest rates are changing, labor shortage, this and that, there's a lot of unanticipated expenses. And I'm wondering, when it comes in costing more than anticipated, who takes that difference up?
Imagine Clearwater or this project?
Both.
So Imagine Clearwater is on time and on budget. We're awfully far down the road at this point. We don't anticipate any surprises that are going to cause overruns.
Is the projection that you have, is that padded a little bit to cover?
We have contingencies in the budget for overruns. The big concern was the underground work that was done down at Coachman Park, because there's a lot of infrastructure that is underground that was abandoned before we had GPS and all of the mapping that's done today. But all of that underground work is complete. So, and most of the structures have already been built. If you go onto our website, www.myclearwater.com, you can look. We have 2 cameras set up 24/7 that you can look at the north end and the south end of the park. The steel for the amphitheater is almost complete. The entire amphitheater structure has been poured. So now the finish work comes in. All the playground equipment, all the other equipment has been bought, and most of it is on site or being stored throughout the city, because we didn't want to get caught due to supply chain.
That's what I was thinking about.
Everything's been purchased, it's all been paid for. So it's all sitting waiting. One of the things I told staff is, I do not want to get within 3 or 4 months of when we were supposed to open, and somebody say, it's going to take 9 months to get X, Y, Z. Don't want to hear that.
Well,
so if they run over on their costs, that is on them.
well, I just remember situations such as the bridge that goes over to Clearwater Beach had to be partially demolished and repaired or reworked.
That's correct.
So you never really can be 100% on things.
Well, we didn't pay for that one though. FDOT and PCL, which was the contractor, they had the way they did that bridge was they cantilevered it, and we had a storm come through and it torqued those piers, and they had to be replaced. But that was at nobody really knows who paid for it, between FDOT and PCL, but it was a brokered agreement. The city put in about, I think, 10 million in penny for Pinellas back then to expedite the project, but that was our limit.
So with these buildings, the financing is pretty much set as far as
It's on the developer. And the developer, these are developers with extraordinarily deep pockets. On the D'Annunzio Group, you have one of the main partners who's a billionaire. And the Gotham Group is financed through Goldman Sachs and a couple other banks. And the number of projects that they build and the magnitude, they have the wherewithal to complete this project. It's one of the reasons that we selected them.
So they get out of it the rental fees from all of the apartments?
Yes. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate great questions, some I've never heard. This is my 14th presentation, so it's hard to give me something new, but I appreciate it. I hope you will vote yes. I think it's critical for the future of the city. I think it'll be a tragedy if it doesn't pass. I really do. I believe in it. This is one of the things on my checklist. I can tell you I've already announced I'm not running for re-election. 14 years is enough. Some people are thrilled with that. But it's been great, great with the city, and I love Clearwater, but it's time to move on. So thank you all for your attention, and be safe going home. God bless.